These are goose biots. They are dyed goose wing feathers that have been split down the spine. So this is just a half of a feather, and when you bend it, it splays out like this. And that is what we're going to use to make the pine needles for this little tabletop tree. The tree I'm making today is 16 inches tall and takes about 55 feathers to make. When you buy goose feathers, be sure you're ordering extras because there's always some in a batch that are no good. They either are broken or are too stiff. Sometimes they're cut too thickly and they will not bend around the wire. So just plan ahead to have some extras on hand. I sell these berries in my shop. They are made out of plaster composition and they look exactly like the ones used in Victorian trees. You need to have 21 berries, which is one for every branch. You'll also want some clips of some sort, either clothespins, binder clips. These pink clips are from the Dollar Tree. We need 21 wires. These are 18 gauge paper wrapped wires. They're 14 inches long, and you can use green wire or brown wire, it's up to you. The color of the wire does show through a little bit. You'll also need a good strong glue as well as masking tape, floral tape, a ruler, and some scissors. You can attach the berries to the ends of the branches in a number of ways. You can use floral tape, masking tape, or even like washi tape, a dot of glue. I'm using just a tiny little piece of masking tape. It's very sticky and not gummy like the floral tape, and I know that my liquid glue is going to stick to it later. When you look at your feather, there's a thicker end and a pointy end, and I am starting my wrapping with the pointed side. To start, I'm running a little bit of glue all the way around the wire. And then I'm holding the feather with the point toward the wire, and the rest of the feather extends past the berry. The idea is that I'm going to hold down the point of the feather and will wrap over it to secure it. As you wrap, the feather naturally splays out. It's kind of magical. All you have to do is keep the spine of the feather against the wire and it will go on in a spiral. Once you get it started, you can start spinning the wire itself and just holding the feather taut. And you just want to aim to keep some tension so that it doesn't unravel as you go. The end of the feather is a bit stiff. You'll feel the change when you're spinning it. And at this point, I hold it with my other hand so that I can apply glue to the feather and finish the wrap. You might be a little nervous about crushing the branch with your hand, but these feathers are very springy and will just bounce right back when you let go. A couple more wraps with the glue will secure it, and then I hold it tight and apply one of my clips. And I'll leave the clip there until it is dry. Once dry, that little tail can be snipped short. When I am adding subsequent feathers to a branch, I like to snip off that little tapered tip of the feather, and that makes the branch a bit more uniform. And here my first feather has dried, so I'm going to snip off the tail of the feather, leaving just about 1/4 of an inch, and I will be wrapping over that little tail with my next feather. And that is the technique for making branches. You can add as many feathers as you need. You can also wrap a feather part way to get a specific length of a branch. If you are making a larger sized tree, you'll want to use a thicker wire, something like a 16 gauge. And you also may need to add a wooden dowel to support the trunk. But a tree that's under 2 feet tall doesn't require anything that heavy duty. So to build the tree, we need to wrap branches that are specific lengths. The top branch of the tree that is mounted vertically needs to be 3 inches long, so you'll just wrap feathers until you reach that length. For the rest of the tree, we need 3 branches that are 2 inches long, 5 branches that are 2.5 inches long, 6 branches that are 3.5 inches long, and 7 branches that are 4 inches long. As I work on the branches for each tier, I compare them to one another to make sure that they're the same length and can make small adjustments as I go. Sometimes that means adding a feather and only wrapping it a few times before gluing it. And there will always be some variation in the thickness of the branches. These feathers are not all the same, and so you'll have areas that are thicker and thinner. Once I have all of my branches made, I'm cutting off any remaining tails from the feathers, leaving just about 1/4 of an inch. And that last little bit I am wrapping against the stem with a small piece of floral tape. This is the part of the wire that's going to be bent and attached to the tree, so this is just an added safeguard to keep that last feather from unraveling. And now, with the exception of the 3-inch treetop, I'm using my straight edge to bend all of the other branches at a 90-degree angle. And now it's time to assemble. I'm going to work from the top down, so I'm taking my 3-inch treetop and my 3 2-inch branches and gathering those together so that they are even. Just to make this easier to handle, I'm going to bind these with a small strip of masking tape and then start wrapping with floral tape. If you're working on a larger size tree, like over 2 feet, you would probably want to bind these together with a little bit of fine wire before wrapping with floral tape. But for something so small, the floral tape is really sufficient and the finished tree is very sturdy. For this tree, the spacing between tiers is 2¼ inches, so I'm wrapping to that length and then continuing to wrap to build out the thickness of the trunk. I like my trees to taper from the top to the bottom, so I'm just building that up a little bit to make it even. And now I'm continuing on to my 2.5-inch branches and spacing those around. You can adjust these a little bit once they're taped. I'm just trying to make sure the wires are not overlapping too much. Again, I have a 2¼ inch space between my tiers, and then I'm applying my 3½ inch branches. After I attach my last branches, I'm just going to wrap the stems together a little bit, leaving the ends loose so that I can cut them. We'll talk about bases in a minute. Mine is going to be made of wood, and so I'm cutting my trunk to 5½ inches, and I think that will look proportional. With the trunk cut to length, I'm wrapping the rest of it in floral tape, and I'm keeping in mind that my wooden base has a 3/8 inch hole, so I'm not wanting to build up the lower part too much that it won't fit. I'll be checking that in a second here to make sure that it is snug, but not too snug. Now I'm going to wrap my trunk with crepe paper to cover the floral tape. This is metallic brown crepe paper. It's really pretty. It's by Leah Griffith, and I think it came in a pack with some other metallics. You can use a flat brown crepe paper, actually any color you like. I cut off about a 1/2 inch strip right off the end of the fold, and that will make a long ribbon of paper. I've just scooched these branches out of the way, and what I'm going to do is apply 2 layers of paper. I'm going to put on a base wrapping and then put on a second wrapping, and that'll make a nice uniform trunk. As I get down to the bottom of the trunk, I'm checking once again to make sure that the tree will still fit in my base. I'm looking for a snug fit, but I don't want to have to force it in there. So let's talk about bases because there's a lot that you can do. This is what I'm using today. These are toy wheels. I got these at Hobby Lobby. And one side of the wheel is textured, but the back of the wheel is flat. And I thought stacked, these would make a nice heavy base. And they already have the holes drilled in the middle, so I don't have to mess around with power tools. I'm just going to glue these together, and after they're dry, I will paint them. Some other options are to use different wood shapes like these little plaques. You can either drill the hole in the center yourself, or you can use these little stands. These are meant for displaying clothespin dolls, but the hole is a little bit bigger, so you would have to build up the thickness of your trunk a little bit. You could just glue that to the top of the plaque and then you don't have to drill any holes. A lot of older antique feather trees used wood blocks. This is a 2-inch cube. Again, you could drill a hole in that yourself or just glue one of the doll stands to the top of it. And then another idea is to use a found object. I got this little terracotta candle holder at the thrift store. It had a candle melted in it that I had to chip out. But you can just glue one of the wheels inside, and then you have a fancy base, and you can just fill the rest with some moss or something. I also got this little creamer, and the wheel fits down in the bottom as well, and that looks really pretty. So you have lots of options. You can get creative with this. Now back to my tree. I'm laying down just a little piece of wax paper just in case any of the glue drips out of the base. And I'm just going to squeeze in the glue and spread it around with a toothpick. And easy does it here. I'm just gently twisting that into place. I'm not going to push it all the way down to the bottom. It's extending just through the hole there. Before I go, I wanted to share a little more inspiration. These collector's books are a great resource if you're looking for ideas or just want to learn more about old crafts. I pick these up on thrift books for about $5 a piece, and they're just a lot of fun to look through. This is great. This tree is electrified, and here are some miniature feather trees. You can add berries and ornaments, tiny candles. It's fun to look at the different bases and the different scales. You can put the branches closer together or farther apart. And if you're making figurines, you can sort of add it into a display, make tiny sprigs for a Santa. Of course, this would look great with some spun cotton. And I love the little fence. You can make a little village scene around the bottom of your feather tree. Well, I hope you enjoyed this project. Thank you for joining me today.